Men that fail in their retirement over here in Southeast Asia. Now, men can fail in their retirement anywhere. They can fail right there at home, whatever their home country might be. But since I've lived here 8+ years in the Philippines, and I've observed a great number of men that have come here to retire, fortunately, most of them have succeeded. They've treated the game of retirement the same way someone might play a game of chess. They're thinking 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. They have contingency plans that if this rook gets taken or this pawn they're willing to sacrifice because it's short-term pain that they're going to experience at that point in time. But at the end of the total game, the game of retirement, they get to call checkmate and they've won because they were able to look ahead, foretell what may or may not happen, and be prepared for those consequences. The other guys that I see fail over here, you can almost akin them more to a game of checkers, where everything's just kind of hopscotch and impulsive and relying a lot on luck and not really planning very much. I would say one of the common threads that run through the guys that do fail in their retirement over here is one of optimism and a false sense of security or a false sense of reality and refusing to believe that things can and will go wrong for them. That, like that game of checkers, you're just going to rely on a little bit of luck. And I can relate to it if I go back to the 1970s when I was in my early 20s. I had a buddy named Brett Nodine. And I grew up in this little white suburban neighborhood with Brett. And we were in our early 20s. And Brett was the only guy I knew that had a bookie. I'd only heard about these guys. I always thought they were somewhere in, the grungy part of New York somewhere with the mafia. Well, Brett had a bookie, and because Brett loved to gamble. And Brett sometimes would come over to my apartment and say, "Hey, can I hang out here tonight? Can I stay here tonight?" I go, "Yeah, what's up?" He goes, "Well, my bookie's looking for me." And then there would be the time where he hit the trifecta or the basketball game, what the hell he was betting on. He was a gambleaholic. And he would be Fat City. And he'd be taking us all out to dinner, and he'd be sporting a new shirt and have some pretty girl on his arm and all that good stuff. That was my buddy Brett. And there was a road trip that he convinced me to take. And he had talked me into the fact that we could get in the car and we could go to Vegas and we could slay that dragon. And man, he had me pumped. I was ready to rock and roll. I had $220 in my pocket, and he assured me that because of his system that he had playing blackjack, that if I just mimicked his moves, that we would come out of there thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars ahead, and life would be a cakewalk, and we're just going to have a great time. And so we were going to go slay the dragon. Well, after that 5.5-hour hump from LA to Vegas, which is just brutal, we got into town, and I had my $220 I had in my pocket, I remember. And Brett had about the same amount of money, and we had planned to be in Vegas for 3 days. We were going to stay at the Tropicana, and we were going to go in their pool at the time, which was the shit. It was the place to be back in the 70s. And they had this bar you could swim up to. And we had all these things in our mind. We were going to have this wild 3-day weekend there. And we were going to be swimming in cash and free drinks and beautiful women. And our 3-day vacation turned into 2.5 hours. we landed there like the 2 pigeons we were. We went up to the tables and we were flat out before it got dark. And so the only saving grace was Brett had the foresight, to put $15 in his glove box that he couldn't touch. And that bought us enough gas to get back to LA from Vegas. And we came back just, limping into town, dejected, depressed. And yet, a week or two later, that unbridled enthusiasm and hope and fantasy reignited. And what do you know? We must have done that same trip 2 or 3 different times, maybe 4, and came back with the exact same results. That example is kind of the common thread that I see that pulses through the veins and the thought process of guys that come over here and have this unrealistic expectation of what they're going to find. They've watched all the videos and read all the literature, and they've seen it in the brochure, I suppose, that how little you can live on over here and how plentiful the women are and blah, 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 blah. And yet they have not taken any types of steps to lay any kind of foundation or groundwork any more than Brett and I did when we hopped into his little Toyota to go up to Vegas. And they come over here and their decisions are based not on any thoughtful kind of process. They don't have a throttle on their emotions, which I think plays a big role in this. Many men come over here wounded and weak, and they've been beat up and are lonely and are somewhat desperate. And so when they get here, they're kind of like wounded prey. The Philippines for itself is not really a vicious country, but anywhere that you go where, you're like a deer in the headlights, there is that element out here that will spot it and take advantage of it. And these guys, unfortunately, just don't have what it takes to say no, because they want to believe what they want to believe. And so they'll run into some woman and she'll clean them out in a heartbeat. They'll impulsively just rent an apartment or a house out here without giving it the proper perusal or investigate it. They'll find out they've paid 6 months in advance for a place that's got a pack of barking dogs next door. The list goes on and on and on. And so I think the gist of this little short video is that not only should a person financially set themselves up to where they know they're going to have an income stream, but it's very important also to have that forethought of having a security blanket or a nest egg that you can rely on if you run out of money before your next check hits the bank. I'm talking about Social Security or pension or something to that effect. Guys that come over here with just a finite lump sum of money almost always lose. It's never enough. They think they're going to come over here, they're going to meet the girl, they're going to set up camp, and because in their mind they're going to live here on X amount of dollars per month, they find out too little too late that just didn't happen. It's not true. They've been misled, and they've believed what they've wanted to believe, and there's a lot more time left than money before they start to receive their pension or their Social Security. And a lot of these guys have to be repatriated back because they're still so emotionally immature that they refuse to let go of the dream that they're going to stay here and tomorrow will get better. It's like going to Vegas. That next hand is going to be that 21, and that's going to get you back into the game. Doesn't work that way. If someone has not only set themselves up to be financially set, that's about half the game. You should have, in my mind, I know I did it, and anybody else you talk to will tell you the exact same thing. You must have a safety net. You must have X amount of dollars in an account. In my heart and mind, it should be enough to buy you a plane ticket, get yourself back home, and possibly just realize that you're going to have to go back to work. You pulled the trigger way too soon, and you mismanaged your funds, and now it's time to regroup. Those are the lucky ones. The other ones have come over here, perhaps with or without that safety net. They have that monthly income and they've blown through it. And the reason why is that they did not do an emotional gut check on themselves. Many of us have come over here damaged. Many of us have come over here and have been, well, lack of a better word, needy, insecure. We haven't had any kind of positive affirmation in years from anyone or anything. When you make that flight over here to the Philippines, that tends to flip on its head. You're finding friendly people. You're finding that all of a sudden women are once again perhaps expressing an interest in you. And there's a total lack of impulse control when they land here and all of this hits them in the face. They want to play the role of the big shot. They're in vacation mode. They haven't figured out that they have to temper it, that they have to space it out. They have to take their time, and for crying out loud, simply slow down and take it easy. It'll be there tomorrow. You don't have to get there today. You don't have to fall in love with and move in and get married to the first woman that you've met. I know guys that have been here less than a month and are making wedding plans. And inevitably, I saw that happen time and time again. And you know what? It ended badly. Either she left him or he left her or he couldn't get rid of her fast enough. And I won't get into all the sordid details, but it's the same thing if you just met a woman in your home country and after 2 or 3 dates, you say, hey, let's live together. You don't even know that person. And one thing that you can be rest assured about, at least back in my home country, is that there are some safety nets pre-set up for people. There's food banks if you go broke. There's government programs that you can rely on. There's, I guess, welfare still works. I don't know. But there's no reason that someone should starve back in the United States. There's government subsidies and all that good stuff that one can take part of if necessary. Over here, there's none of that. And you find yourself, walking this tightrope without a net. And one false move and you're over the top. You're not going to get caught. You're just going to hit the ground hard. And that happens to more guys than I care to even remember. What have they done wrong? They have not treated it pragmatically. They have not sat back and said, am I really ready, financially and emotionally, to take on this new venture in my life? These are my golden years. This is the last dance. This is my last chance for some meism. Last chance for it to be about me. And why would you take the one thing that you can finally treat yourself to and mismanagement it into the earth? Why would you do that? Because you are believing what you want to believe. You're listening to guys like me, I suppose, that are saying, wow, what a great life I have over here, and this is going well, and that's going well. Well, we need to temper that with the fact that it's not all rainbows and puppy dog tails. It is a litany of things that can and go wrong. And if you're aware of that, that's 90% of the game. Be cognizant of just how weak and susceptible you may be inside. I can truly tell you that when I came over here, I felt empty, I felt dejected, I felt rejected, and I knew that it's going to take a long time for me to rebuild my psyche up. And I'm happy to say that after 8 years, majority of that has been a total healing process, and one that I can look back on and say, thank God I didn't act like those other guys that just jumped into the first thing that presented itself because it looked good. take a step back and realize that not everything that you see is as it presents itself. There's always a story behind the story. Examples, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go there in this video. But I will say that financial responsibility is extremely important over here. Learn to tell yourself no. I get it. You're first here, you go into vacation mode. You're picking up all the checks. First time in your life, you've been able to be the big spender. You're the big fish in the small pond because your little Social Security check or pension or whatever it might be is bigger than 90% of the population's, and you feel kind of puffed up like you're the shit. You're not. You're just you. And there's always someone there that is willing to take advantage of you. Not only the locals, but fellow expats and foreigners. Believe me, I've been snookered by a fellow expats 2, 3, 4 times. And I didn't see it coming because I was trusting them. Well, I learned my lesson. And fortunately, I was able to pull back and get those people out of my life. However, I did make the mistake, I fully admit to it, of I allowed them into my world because they were telling me exactly what I wanted to hear. I wasn't strong enough at that point in time to say no or even realize what was happening. I would say to always err on the side of conservatism. Be willing to say, I'm going to give that thought or that decision 72 hours before I pull the trigger. If you come over here and you've managed to set yourself up with an income stream and a safety net, please, I implore you, don't get to the point to where you've got to the safety net and decided to go ahead and drain it too, with the optimism that you're going to hit a blackjack tomorrow as opposed to busting out. Okay, that's the little video, and I will see you guys next time I see you.